everybody, welcome. Today we're going to be looking at AP Euro. AP Euro Ideologies. Sorry, that. During the 19th century. Which is just the 1800s. So, what I'm going to start with is I'm just going to start by making a mind map. So this is the way I like to do it, is I like to write the name of the topic. So this is conservatism. We're just going to go over all the isms. Conservatism. Right? And then you're going to do your color of choice. Let's go with the purple here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put like little thoughts and stuff off it that have to do with conservatism. So what happened is political conservatism has to do with nobility. It has to do with aristocracy. It has to do with the church, and it's really the old order. Has to do with a strong absolutist monarch. It also deals with tradition. So the people that usually favored conservatism is the aristocracy, and the reason being is because they traditionally held power. So they were in support of a system that allowed them to hold power as they traditionally do. And then we have a lot going on. So we have the French Revolution, the end of the 17th century, and then we have the Napoleonic era. The Wars of Napoleon end, and then the Congress of Vienna is held with the goal of preserving the old order and tradition, bringing back balance of power, undo the French Revolution, Napoleon, restore political power and balance. So the Napoleon takes over, really upsets the balance of power in Europe, and the strong European powers, which is made up of the Quadruple Alliance, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and England, come together, and one major conservative figure in this is Metternich, Clemens von Metternich. So he is an aristocrat, and he is a foreign minister of Austria during the Congress of Vienna, and he becomes a very influential figure in keeping this balance after this time of chaos and French Revolution. So he is an aristocrat, and you can see his title. It says von. It's von Metternich. So he has a designation that shows he's nobility, and he blames the middle class because he thinks the peasants are inherently conservative because they like to go to church and they like to have their days off, and they are fine with that, but it's the middle class, the rising middle class, that is having that kind of hold. So He rejects equality and liberty. He thinks that the French Revolution is a perfect example of how regular people can't govern themselves. He opposes political liberalism, and he shows that, like, look what happened at the Reign of Terror, look what happened to Napoleon, there's so much violence, war, and bloodshed, because regular people can't govern themselves, so we have to have people who are by blood meant to rule, and that's, like, the way it is to keep power and balance and all this and that. So that's kind of the conservative, like, going back to that after such a time of change. And then we also have a few more radical isms, but from conservatism we're going to move on to liberalism. So again, starting with the term in the middle, we're doing liberalism. So what we're going to do is, for liberalism, it really focuses on popular sovereignty, so meaning a representative government with a focus on people's property. This is usually supported by the middle class and business interests. So the reason being is that this is not as conservative, but it's more allowing for freedom of speech to people, because these middle class people, they don't have the nobility, they don't have the noble title, they have the wealth, and they're like working. They're workers, bankers, merchants, industrialization, like people who made money from that, like factory owners, stuff like that. But they don't have the nobility title. They don't have the rights that like other, like whatever men do. So they are for liberalism, which kind of balances out that playing field. Liberalism is also for freedom of speech. And freedom of press, assembly, to like peacefully protest, all that good stuff, voting. So it's really a lot different from an absolute monarchy. So their like ideal situation would be a constitutional monarchy. So there's still a monarch, but there is a representative body, there's voting, there's all that freedom of speech. This is like the French Revolution. So popular sovereignty, it also connects to the business interests, so that it has a connection. It's based on equality before law, like trial and all that good stuff. And going along with that, like a meritocracy based. So with things with liberalism, you have equal access to opportunity. Like, it's based on your merit, based on your skill. It's not just based on like your blood and like the family you're born into. So that is, okay, yeah, an example, this would be like Parliament constitutional charter, all that good stuff. So the monarch at the time or whatever has to rule alongside the representative body. Next, more radical than this, we're going to move to republicanism and socialism. And then nationalism is a thing that ties, it's like everything together, which I will demonstrate at the end. So we have republicanism, which has to do with the Chartist movement. And, oops. Which is based on the universal right to vote. And it is more radical because people have less to lose. So whereas liberalism, the middle class people, they have a lot to lose. They're benefiting from the economy, from trade. There's a lot that they're living comfortable lives, like considerably, like comparatively. So people that are supporting this are usually the working class, and they don't have that much to lose. They only have good things to gain from taking the streets, from overthrowing like all this stuff. They don't have as much, so they're more radical. It is also based on the idea that people wanted to elect a leader, and they wanted to elect a leader with universal male suffrage. So they didn't want it to only be for a specific group of people or like based on some interests and not everybody else's interests. And that is mostly the important parts of republicanism. The next kind of ideology we can go into is socialism. Come back here. Okay, so socialism. So the thing with socialism, it has an emphasis on community. And it's less on the individual, like, person. So it's a lot of workers and intellectuals. Okay. And they're really for government programs that make up and correct for social and economic inequality. So it is meant to like make up for birth state/privileges. So everybody's kind of even on the playing field. Okay. Okay, so they support legislation like laws and systems. That looks really weird, sorry about that, but it's laws. So, to protect the workers. So, with the rise of industrialization, this is just like a quick side note, the rise of industrialization and urbanization and people really trying to maximize profit margins, it meant that things were growing almost like out of a necessity. The workers, so their lands were enclosed, the peasants had to move to the city, they had to find work because they weren't able to live off the land anymore, so they went to factories and they worked long, hard hours, didn't have many breaks, they had to clock in. The rural cottage system, the putting out system was done, and it was moved to more mass-produced things based on inventions that started the Industrial Revolution, and in energy-powered systems like steam and coal and all these different inventions like the water crane, the spinning jenny, all that stuff. So this meant that workers were often getting left behind almost in a way, because the interests of people in Parliament, in the places where there was power, was mainly the aristocracy and upper middle class. So the working class and workers got left behind, and urbanization just made it worse because the cities were becoming really filthy, unhygienic. They were living in very, very poor conditions. It was becoming so dense, and it was not ideal in any way. So that was why that is also kind of like ties into that. And then now we're going to touch on nationalism. So obviously there's a lot more than this. This is just a quick mind map. This is almost like a warm-up. This is just a little overview of all the different things that are going on. So there's all these conflicting beliefs happening at the time in Europe, and they're all competing with each other, obviously. So that's why this time period becomes one of so much tension, and there's people who have power, they don't want to give it up, and there's people who want to get more power, there's people feeling unrepresented. So there's a lot of different, conflicting viewpoints that cause people to be okay, I saw how it's going, and there's a lot of redrawn maps and things like that. So, nationalism. What is nationalism? It begins essentially. It is easiest way to put it is national and cultural unity, meaning somebody identifying with their nation, not their region. So most people identified either with their religion, like their religious faith, like Catholic, I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, I'm Anglican, this, that, I'm Huguenot, I'm this. So that's how a lot of people identified. But this was different. This was identifying with your country. I'm German, I'm Italian, I'm English, I'm French. It's a different sort of force and imagined community. So a lot of times this was through the same language. This was through shared tradition. This is through ethnicity. This is through territory. And oftentimes religion. But there are some empires that are so huge, and they have so many competing groups of people that are nationally, culturally identifying with themselves, that it causes a lot of tension. So it gives a reason for the public to fight. And the thing with this is it transcends class divisions. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by it transcends class divisions? So people have their best interests at heart, and they identify with the things that are going to get their situation with their life ahead. So most people in the working class aren't going to agree with things that the people in the aristocracy are putting forth and their opinions are, and that's because they have different viewpoints. They're living different lives. They're in different classes. The things that they're going through, even if they're in the same city in the same time period, is completely different. But what is the one thing that can get past at all? They can't say, oh, I'm this and you're that. I'm a worker and you're like factory owner. I'm whatever religion and you're this other religion. No, but we are all German. We are all French. That is a uniting force. It is actually the force behind a lot of wars, because it brings about a sense of superiority. I identify with this country and it's better than the rest. It should take over the rest. So there are downsides. Another downside, countries found that they can use nationalism, this quote-unquote rallying behind the flag, to distract from domestic issues. What do I mean by that? If there's something going on, they're just going to go to war and say, look, we have to fight with this enemy, we're all united in this one cause against this enemy, conquering this land, we're lifting up these people, whatever the case may be, and it distracts from issues going on within the current nation because they're focused on something else. And the whole country is like identifying with that. So there's no like so much division and like tension. It's kind of weeding that out for the time being. But the downside of this is it causes a lot of wars. Okay, so that's one thing that we also have going on. Another thing is this began under Napoleon during the French Revolution, but it also was a major factor for a lot of other wars, and over time we can still see its effects. It is very strong, it's very enduring, and it is something that is very hard. It's very hard to compare to anything else. Like, there's all the other isms, and those are, like, different in their own right, but this is, like, completely a different beast. So, it was very a strong and aggressive push and a way for things to like hold, and it eventually led to world wars. But just some examples could be the Greek unification, Italian unification. So the whole thing is these people wanted to unify, they identified, they didn't want to be under the big kingdoms anymore. I'll give you an example. Greek unification, they were under Ottomans, and they were like, no, we are Greek, we are not. They didn't identify with the Ottoman Empire. So they wanted to break apart, have independence, and make their own country in a way. And this was how nationalism is used as a tool. This is also shown with Germany. And there's many more examples. There's the Hungarians, there's the Serbs, there's all these people that are in the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is weakening, and they are identifying with the people in their area. They're Poles and Slavs and Hungarians and all these different people, and there's the Greeks and there's the Turks. There's so many different groups of people. All these ethnic minorities are identifying not with the Ottoman Empire. They're identifying with their own cultural unity and identity. So that's what's causing this tension, and they're able to, quote-unquote, rally behind a flag, and they're able to use this as a driving factor and motivation, almost. So that's the thing about nationalism. So one thing I want to go back to is Metternich and conservatism, and I think this ties in with what we just talked about with nationalism. So Metternich actually opposes nationalism. And the reason being, is because he thinks it's a dangerous force that leads to war, and it gives unique groups of people like a power, and they give them like a thing to push against the current conservative countries that have power, and they want to save it, they want to conserve, they want to keep things the way they are. So he says it's a threat to Austria if, let's say, the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Bohemians, etc., they all leave. They all say, no, we're not part of Austria. We are this country, we're this, we are that. And so he opposes nationalism because he thinks that it is a threat to his power. So that is something that he tries to do, is he tries to use censorship. So that's another thing that's conservatism, would be censorship, like the Carlsbad decrees. And he's trying to shut down university students that are, you know what I mean? So anybody who thinks of, quote-unquote, revolting, that's what that is referring to. So I feel like I spelled that wrong. Censor. Yeah. But that is another thing. So essentially they're trying to oppose nationalism and shut it down. They don't want to deal with that. They think it's a dangerous force leading to war. They want to restore balance of Europe. They don't want to have all that going on because they already had such a chaotic time with the French Revolution, the Napoleonic era. So that's kind of where that comes in. But later on, all these different ideas are going to end up competing with each other. And ultimately, nationalism is going to be also a big driving force of all of this. So, just want to say thank you for listening. And I'm just going to show this one more time from the top. And that is it for our AP Euro 19th Century Ideologies Mind Map Review. So we have conservatism with old order traditions. Clemens von Metternich, very important aristocratic foreign minister of Austria, to hold down the way that things have been with Austria, Prussia, Russia, and England. There's Congress of Vienna, which would be important with this, so I would make sure to know Congress of Vienna, and then Council of Europe, and then Holy Alliance. Next, we have liberalism. So middle class supported this, which is based on popular sovereignty, constitutional monarchy, voting, equality before the law, and it's mainly business interest because they didn't have a noble title, they didn't have those noble privileges, so they wanted that, but they didn't think that everybody should be able to have it. That's why it's a constitutional monarchy. So it's checked government power with monarchy and a representative body, EX Parliament, and another thing is the French Revolution. Next, we have republicanism with the Chartist movement, and its main thing is universal male suffrage. That's what you really want to remember with republicanism. It's more radical because the people supporting it had less to lose, They wanted to elect a leader, and mainly working class supported it. Socialism was based on seeing how industrialization and urbanization changed everything, and there's people getting left behind and mistreated, and it wasn't out of their own will in a way. It was the environment that was putting them in harm. So they were mainly workers and intellectuals, and they wanted to focus on community by using government programs to correct for social and economic inequality. The thing with socialism is it's equal outcome, versus liberalism is equal opportunity, which is meritocracy, which is based on merit, not on blood. Next, we have nationalism. So this is really a big force behind war that transcends class divisions. It is based on a national and cultural identity, and it's based on unity. So a lot of things people can identify with include language, tradition, ethnicity, territory, and region. And the downside of this is it gives rise to ethnocentrism and the feeling that one country is better and superior to another. That is one bad thing that comes out of this. Also, wars and tensions, because each country thinks they're better, they're the best of the best. So that causes a lot of tensions. Thank you.